And we'll get started. Just to confirm that we're all in the right session, you're all here for mobile security, is that correct? Perfect, okay. Well, I'll go ahead and introduce our speaker, Chris Stier from NQ Mobile. And Chris is going to give us a discussion on mobile security. As you know, Chris is Managing Director for the Americas for NQ Mobile. He's got an extensive background in wireless, over 15 years with Motorola worldwide. And really the key point for this session is with the explosive growth that you all see in the smartphone segment, the question that really comes up is there an exposure or is there a risk to either your networks or to your subscribers from virus or malware type scenario? And so Chris is going to unpack all of that for us this afternoon. After he's done, we're going to make sure there's time because it's probably going to be things where you're going to have some questions on. So we'll have time for question and answer. And then afterwards, if we run out of time, just come on up afterwards, get Chris your card, and I'm sure he'll take your questions then. So with that, I'll introduce Chris Stier.
Check in. Well, thank you very much, Clay, and thank you everybody for being here and participating in today's session. I'm very excited to be able to share with you more about the mobile security space. As Clay mentioned, I was with Motorola for 15 years prior to joining NQ Mobile. So I worked with a lot of carriers during that time. Obviously coming from an OEM, I also understand how we view security on the devices. And you know, given this is a pretty nascent space, the session is meant to be educational. It's meant to be informative, and I'd love to have any questions and follow-ups after this if you'd like. So just in order to introduce a little bit about NQ Mobile and who we are, because I have a pretty good idea that you've probably never heard of us, despite the fact we have been around for a while. We were founded in 2005, and we were originally funded by 3 of the major US VCs. So Sequoia, Fidelity, and Mayfield actually funded us. The company had a stronghold in Asia to begin with because it was the first company really to understand that there were going to be emerging threats on the mobile side. And obviously Asia was the first region in the world to have a uptake in smartphones back in 06, 07. So very quickly the company established a research center in China, which was the biggest market for the threats as well. And there was an early understanding that we needed to be in that market in order to be able to truly detect malware and the threats and have a good understanding of the space. So that's where the company originally started, and it's grown to be a global company over the last several years as smartphones have proliferated throughout the entire world. So now we have offices in London, in the US, in Hong Kong, for the rest of Asia as well, and still a big R&D center in China, as well as a US security research center that I'll talk a little bit about later on. Interesting thing about the company is the technology was originally started as a server cloud-based technology for detecting threats. And all the threat detection capabilities, the risk rank algorithms, the crawler engines and so on, were packaged into an SDK, and now we're able to offer a solution that has a client side as well as a cloud side. And that client-side solution is on over 147 million users. We're the largest mobile security company in the world. If you look on the mobile-specific side, which we've only been focused on mobile, we didn't do anything on the PC and try to port it over to the mobile side. We're actually larger than all our competitors on the mobile side put together. And the reason that's really important is because you need scale as an anti-malware, antivirus company in order to be able to have a really good threat detection network. If you think about all the applications and the URLs that users are accessing on their smartphones, we are scanning each one of those that have our solution on them, and we're compiling all that information into our database. So our database is the largest, it's the most sophisticated. It's similar to thinking about Google, and the more pages that they index, the faster and more powerful their search capabilities are. It's the same thing with a antivirus, anti-malware company and solution. You need to have a very powerful, robust database in order to quickly detect new threats and be able to push out new solutions. So we're growing very quickly, as I mentioned, over 275,000 new users each and every day, based on our Q4 run rate of 23 million new users. We've had some strategic investors come into the company, Qualcomm, HTC, and MediaTek, which allowed us to go public last year. on the New York Stock Exchange. And our solution currently works across Android and Symbian, being the two most open and vulnerable platforms, as well as BlackBerry, Windows Mobile, and there are some features that work on iOS. Given iOS does not permit antivirus, anti-malware solutions, nobody can do antivirus, anti-malware on iOS, but we have other features on the security side that do work on iOS. To give you a little bit of history also, we've won several awards. Time Magazine awarded us one of 10 companies that'll change your life, and we were voted one of the 25 hottest startups in 2011 at GSMA, as well as World Economic Forum gave us an award that they've given also to Google and Twitter. So wanted to give you a sense of who we are and that we are big in this space because the next 30 minutes that I'm going to spend talking to you, I'm really going to talk about our analytics, talk to you about what we've seen as the trends, what we see as the hot spots in this space and the predictions for 2012. Obviously, how you can protect your users and essentially your network, because it does all come back to your network as well. So here's the short agenda. As I mentioned, I'll go into each one of these areas, and I'll try to keep it to about 30 minutes so we have some time at the end to spend on any questions and answers. So going into the big global infection here and the rising threat of mobile malware. It's staggering to me to see the number of threats that we detected last year, right? So I know that in the US still, mobile malware isn't something that's top of mind, isn't the biggest concern for consumers and even for some carriers. However, when you look at the global landscape, last year was an astounding increase from 2010 as far as number of threats detected, along with the sophistication of these threats and how they're infecting phones and what they're doing to phones. So we had a rise from almost 7,000 to 25,000 threats across all platforms. And it's truly of global magnitude, right? So we saw in our users, as far as our users go, about 11 million of them when downloaded our application had an infection on their phone, had some type of virus or malware on their phone. And those 11 million users were split up amongst these regions here. So China still being the biggest, where the most viruses and malware is originating from and is infecting users. We do have about 60% market share in China, so we are still a very big player there. And then across the UK, Russia, US being the third largest country where we see the number of infected users. So truly spread across the world. When you look at the platforms that are obviously being targeted, given that now Android has become the largest platform in the world from a smartphone perspective, it's also very open, very vulnerable, as we all know. It is the one that's being targeted the most. On the right-hand side, you can see how the growth on a monthly basis last year of the number of threats that we've been detecting, and it has taken over Symbian as the platform that now has the most viruses on a monthly basis. Symbian was by far the most popular in the past across the world, and it was even more open than Android. So definitely that's a big inflection point, and with smartphones now outpacing the number of PCs that are being shipped, the critical mass is there. The hackers are definitely turning from the PC to the smartphone, given the fact the smartphone not only holds all the things the PC did, but it also holds a lot more personal, private information when it comes to text messages, when it comes to phone calls, when it comes to location and always being with you. So it's a very interesting target for hackers, and it is a global dynamic. Here's just some additional detail of some other countries besides the top 5 I had mentioned before, including Saudi and Indonesia and so on. So Southeast Asia, Middle East, where smartphones have been around for a while, are also heavily targeted there. We do certainly expect that over the course of the next 12 to 24 months that this will spread. And hackers right now, we feel, are still in the testing stages. They're seeing what's working, they're exploring, and we believe that they're going to find out what are the best ways to attack and then really start driving some viruses targeted at the different regions around the world. As we start to use our phones for more things, obviously it's only natural that's going to happen as well, right? With NFC coming, with all the other mobile payment mechanisms that are out there, it's definitely something we need to be ready for. So it's important to understand how these attacks are actually happening. And as I mentioned before, it is very complex. There's several different ways that phones are being infected. The number one way still by far is via applications. And these applications, it's not coming necessarily from the Android market. The Android market is still very, very safe. There are some issues, some malware that does appear there, but other third-party app stores are certainly much more of a problem. So piggybacking is one of the ways, as we studied our malware, that these viruses are making it onto the phones. And what does that mean? Well, scammers and hackers, what they'll do is they'll take down a popular application, they will insert malicious code into that application, repackage it, and put it back up on the App Store. So users won't know. It'll look like a legitimate application that has been up there, and they will download it, and that malicious code will then infect the phone. That's one way that the viruses are getting into the phones. Other more sophisticated ways include things like botnets, right? Very popular on the PC side. With the botnet coming through, again, an application, it's not necessarily that a whole entire malicious payload was uploaded into the legitimate application and repackaged. There may be an upgrade component or a small component that was put into the application, and when downloaded, what it does is actually connect to a remote command and control server, and remotely the attacker, the hacker, can then insert malware or access items into your phone, get rootkit privileges, and do things like that. So these botnets will then spread via SMS as well, because they'll be able to send SMS with a link or with a picture or with another, some type of malicious payload inside an app or package to other users, and they'll continue to spread that way. And then what we call drive-by downloads as well, which, let's not forget, we're starting to do more browsing on these smartphones than we do on our computers at home. Globally, more people access the internet through their smartphones than they ever did on the PC, right? So it's very, very easy distribution target as well for hackers to go through malicious URLs or infect the advertising within an application, so that when a user clicks on that, takes them to a URL that has a application on there that is infected. And it may take them to a site that looks just like the Android market even, or some other legitimate app store. And the user won't even know that they are actually on a malicious URL, and they are going to download something malicious on their phone. The website will also try to extract their personal credentials, try to get their email, try to get their phone number, so that it can go after personal information of theirs as well, and other passwords. So certainly URLs, we're seeing an increase in the number of malicious URLs. So it's not only applications, but applications are certainly the biggest way that phones are becoming infected. And again, what are these threats doing once they do get onto the phone? So escalating privileges, as I mentioned, root exploits. What is, as most of you know, rooting the phone, you basically give yourself, or in this case, somebody else gets the super user or admin access to your phone. So they bypass all the security framework within Android, as an example, and are able to do things that normally you shouldn't be able to do. So access system files, access read-only files or functions, be able to extract information, make phone calls, send text messages in the background without the user even knowing. So gaining access to all these types of functions on your phone is something that the malware is doing. Controlling infected devices, I talked a little bit about that on the botnet side, which again, it's staggering to see that over 90% of the malware that we've seen actually has some type of server component to it. It was the first time last year that we've seen this type of active communication within the malware, being able to be online connecting with either through the web or some other type of server through text messages, and being able to send commands back and forth without users even knowing, intercepting text messages and so on and so forth. So that's a very sophisticated and developing way that phones are being able to control your device, or sorry, that malware is being able to control your device. And then financial charges. This will be the #1 reason why malware is obviously targeting users. It's for some type of financial gain. And in countries where SMS, paying via SMS, premium SMS services are very popular, which the U.S. isn't one of them today, but we're starting to have more and more of these premium SMS services. This has become a big issue. In China, for example, this is one of the largest issues, is premium SMS, where in malware will infect the user's phone, and they'll send an SMS to a premium SMS service that's controlled by the attacker. And they'll even be able to intercept the confirmation SMS that's coming back and send any other SMS to confirm the transaction as well. So this is for financial gain. It's happening certainly in many other countries in Asia, and we've seen this happening in the US as well as Singapore. And then stealing of private information. And you know, the stealing of private information, it's interesting because it's not only malware that's accessing our private information on our phones. As you've probably read a lot, even on iOS, and iOS is less prone to malware by far, but the accessing of private information, even by legitimate applications, is something that is very concerning today, and something that many users are raising to their carriers. There are certainly, the Congress is looking at many privacy type laws as we speak to really understand what applications are able to access on your phone and what they're able to extract from your phone. Probably most of you know, Facebook today has access to our contacts. Obviously makes sense, but they also have access to all our SMS, and they can extract SMS as they please from the phone, right? So Angry Birds has access to our location, right? And you wonder, why does Angry Birds need access to your location? But it's obviously to collect information, probably for some targeted marketing reason, but it's collecting private information that most users don't know. So whether it's a malware situation where the victim's phone is being affected, and phone numbers and contacts and call logs and other information are being extracted from the phone, or whether it's a legitimate application, privacy theft is certainly one of the big areas as well that's under scrutiny right now. To give you a little bit more detail on some specific profiles and specific cases that we've seen, there's, in the past couple years here, we detected a mini mobile game, for example. It was a botnet that affected over 100,000 users around the world. The virus was embedded in a mini mobile game, and it lured the user to download it like any other type of mobile game. But once it was downloaded, the botnet actually turned the device into a remotely controlled device, and the originator was able to send text messages to premium SMS services without the user knowing that was happening in the background. So that's the evil Android picture there. Next one here was just in 2010. It was a innocent-looking tip calculator, and that actually was infected with spyware. And in this situation, the spyware would send incoming and outgoing SMSs that were coming to and from the phone to an email address that was controlled by the attacker, and that private information was being taken from the phone undetected. So that was another example that we saw. And then just earlier this year, we detected this virus here, this malware called Geofeedbot. And this was the evil Android trying to steal money again here. But we identified this on February 29th, and it used GPS to track your location, and then it automatically sent text messages to SMS services, again, premium SMS services. So it was able to also block the confirming SMS from the service provider, and you didn't really know that you were being billed till you received your first monthly bill. So this was a case where we were the first, NQ Mobile was the first to detect this and publish this. We've got a list of all the malware families and how they were delivered to the phone. If anybody's interested, I can certainly share that information as well. This was one of the latest examples here. So what can we do to help users to protect themselves? And it's certainly not rocket science, but it's interesting how people today are still pretty naive about the need for mobile security. And this is what hopefully all of us in the room can help our users understand, is that, you know, on PCs, there's a 92% roughly or so attach rate for PC security. We wouldn't really think about having our computers unprotected. But for the mobile phone, people think that because I'm on my carrier's network, or because I'm maybe the OEM has put something on it, because it's a phone, they're not thinking about it as a smartphone, as a computer. They don't feel they need to be more aware of certain things and to also have protection on the phone. But we need to educate them that that's not the case, and certainly going forward, it will be even more important. So downloading applications and accessing URLs, again, when users are using applications and they see certain advertising within the app, as an example, and they click on that and they're taken to a site, they need to make sure that that's legitimate, because that's an easy way for malware to be on the phone, is via the advertising in the app, and to take you to a website that's not legitimate. So being careful where you're downloading apps from. There's a lot of third-party app stores in the US and throughout the world that offer applications at a discounted price or for free compared to Android Market or others. And you need to be very careful what you're downloading. So that's extremely important. Making sure there's some type of protection software on the phone. Again, we wouldn't think of not having it on our computer, as our smartphones are now becoming computers. They are computers. We're going to start using them for payment even more so. We need to make sure there's some type of security software on there. Downloading the latest software updates, security patches for the phone. Now, that is something that even Google is trying to make sure that OEMs are doing a better job of, is pushing out the security patches as they detect issues with their latest releases of Android. And certainly, as a carrier, that's a shared responsibility to make sure that, you know, the OEMs are doing it, and if it's going through you, that you're helping your users by pushing through those security patches on the latest software. We encourage people to disable geotagging. Again, having location tracking is not necessarily a good thing when you're away, or if you're going to be targeted for premium SMS or targeted marketing. So unless there's a specific need, we would encourage people to disable the geotagging, and you reduce your risk there. And then finally, just like on the computer, when you're on public Wi-Fi networks and you're using your computer on public Wi-Fi networks, we don't encourage people to actually purchase and make transactions on public Wi-Fi networks. We really encourage people the same thing on their phone when they're browsing on Wi-Fi networks, on public Wi-Fi networks. Don't do sensitive transactions when you're on public Wi-Fi. There's just a much greater risk of being hacked and being compromised on those networks. For operators specifically, it's an education process. I think that's the biggest issue out there, and where operators could really focus on, both to educate and then also to protect the user. So I know many of you have your own app store and have security apps on your app store that you offer. There's also the ability to have those security apps preloaded on your phone so the user is able to access them. It's a potential revenue stream for you while providing a critical service as well to the end users. And I think that is something that is imperative nowadays. Making sure that as much as possible, you standardize the OS version out in the field with your users. Again, not only pushing security patches, but making sure the OSs, especially for Android, are standardized and are up to date as much as possible. This is an issue for the older OS versions, are much more vulnerable to attacks the longer they're out there. So this would be a good thing to do as well. And then in other markets, in more like Asia and so on, where side-loading apps and ad piracy is an issue, many of the operators have really tried to focus the users on their own app stores or trusted zone, trusted apps. So some type of an initiative to secure your apps, have them scanned, or have your app store where you know it's a safe place, you're only loading safe apps up there, or pointing users to the Android market as much as possible, not so much third-party app stores or web forums and things like that. Again, more of an educational process, but also giving them the tools to do that would be highly recommended to make sure that we reduce the number of issues. In addition to security, as I mentioned before, privacy is top of mind. This may even be more top of mind than security right now for consumers, as they really don't understand the threat of malware, but they do understand the threat of their pictures, their contacts, being accessed and being taken without their permission. So this is a big issue. Certainly, even recording of your conversation is something that we've seen several incidents in the past months with celebrities taking place. Android does give access to the voice APIs for applications. So recording conversations and setting them to remote servers has been detected. It's an issue that's out there. And certainly over half of the applications out there can track location. They can have access to address book and pictures. So finding a way to make sure users, number one, understand what applications are accessing on their phone. And number two, giving them some options to protect their most sensitive and sacred information would be other benefits that we could provide to consumers. Some examples, and we're not the only ones out there that do this, but some examples about how we address privacy. There's a privacy advisor module, for example, within our mobile security application, which if you click on each one of these contacts, messages, location, that will tell you which one of your applications on your phone can access your location, can access your SMS, can access your contacts. And if that looks strange for some reason, that an application can access one of those things, you have the ability to uninstall it or at least know that it's happening. As well as there's password protected areas on the phone. We have this application called Secret Vault where you can store contacts. So any password protection area in the phone, any application that's out there that allows you to store contacts, store pictures, files, and those interactions with those contacts, be it SMS, call logs, and so on, and encrypt that information. It's a good way to also segregate your personal from corporate information, for example, if people are using the phone for both reasons. That actually, having that encrypted and password protected will not allow other applications to access that information. So even though an application like Facebook can access your SMS, if you have those SMSs and those contacts inside this password protected area, Facebook can't access that information. Right, so it's a way to protect even more so the privacy with certain contacts and, like I said, either corporate or personal information that you want to put on there. And then having solutions around being able to blacklist certain numbers and anti-spam or blocking calls and SMS is another way to protect the privacy of users, since in some of the networks around the country, spam is a big issue here in the US. So trying to look at it holistically, we believe that it starts with having some type of client-level phone management and performance optimization. And why is that? Being able to have features, and Android does have some of these, and other applications are out there that have the rest, but being able to empower the user to be able to understand what applications are on their phone, what they're doing, the power consumption, which ones are continuously running, because if you have an application that's continuously running in the background and you're not using it, it's another sign it could be extracting information from your phone, is a way that it's an indicator of number one, is malware causing certain issues, or number two, are other applications just badly coded, badly written that are draining my battery? And I'm not going to go back to the carrier or the OEM and complain about that. It's an ability that keeps the user informed and empowers them to manage their device. So we believe it starts there. On top of that, you need some type of device or network protection. So viruses, Trojans, spyware, and other types of malware. There are network-side solutions and there are client-side solutions. And both are available out there. The network side, obviously, much more involved and integrated. On the client side, over-the-top applications that have powerful scan engines that have a server-side solution as well to them. But we strongly recommend having some type of device or network protection. And then the last two blocks here really are around being able to protect the data and block spam and unwanted calls. So either a network or a client side or both solution, which allows you to decongest your network by blocking the spam, blocking calls and SMS that are blacklisted, and protecting your data by putting it into password protected parts of your phone where nobody can access. That kind of gives you the all-around total protection by starting to understand what's going on your phone and manage it, and being informed to being able to protect your phone and protect your privacy. So we feel those are kind of all the angles to make sure you have a total protection on your phone. Lastly, what I want to make available for you is our chief scientist in our U.S. Security Research Center. Our chief scientist there is Dr. Jiang. He is mostly the foremost known expert here in mobile security. He's dedicated the last few years to really understanding the threats that are out there, developing his own proprietary tools to detect those threats. He has courses that he teaches at North Carolina State University around Android and mobile security. He's consulted by many of the carriers around the world, actually, including national and other carriers here in the U.S., as well as OEMs and other types of security companies. So Dr. Jiang he works with the NSA, he works with the Cyber Defense Lab, he's consulted by various organizations. So if you'd like to have a call with him and understand more about specific threats, what he's seeing or trends, he is available as a resource. He is based there at North Carolina State University. Please just reach out to me and I can make an introduction and set up the call or the meeting for you. I'll leave you with my contact details here. And I also have cards up here if you would like. And I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments that you might have. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
So as Chris said, good time to take some questions now.
Yeah, no, it's in Japan. It's not one of the top markets that we've seen threats in, and so we're working closely with actually the carriers in Japan right now. Believe it or not, even though they had some initial research, and the Japanese have always been very advanced in looking into what's coming in the future and so on, there haven't been a lot of mobile payment systems really truly implemented and used to a great deal out there. They are starting to use them more now, but things like NFC and such aren't really being used yet. What type of exact system are you talking about?
They took their mobile phone, they put it at the cashier's desk in a convenience shop, and it just pays.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it works.
Like I said, the Japanese, let me just qualify. The Japanese, as you know, had their own networks and their own technology, which was very proprietary and very kind of insulated from the rest of the world, right? But on Android, on iOS, on some of the platforms that are now being widely used, that hasn't started to yet be implemented in Japan. In their own proprietary networks, they did have some proprietary technology and so on, but that's the hackers weren't focused there because that was very Japan specific. So, yes.
Any applications, have you found any type of malware that actually been able to hijack other applications on mobile, for instance? Like, say you have a mobile banking app with Capital One or Chase or a local credit union, have they been able to actually hijack those applications and pull your credentials off or anything of that nature?
Not hijack those applications, but what we have seen is there's fake apps that hackers have tried to develop that look very similar to other banking institutional applications, right? So one of the things we actually offer, as an example, is financial account security, where when you pull up a financial website, a mobile financial website on your phone, or a mobile application, financial application, we're scanning that to make sure it's a real application. It's not one of these fake ones that have been created out there that are just posing as a real one, and that there isn't any malware inside of it, right? And that's a real site, not a phishing site. But it hasn't been so much about applications hijacking the real ones, because the real ones have been pretty secure. It's more about creating fake ones to look like the real ones.
Do you foresee in the future any type of application that will actually laws in legitimate applications that will hijack it? I'm just curious.
Anything's possible, yeah. Yeah, certainly what we've seen more of is, like I said, malicious code being put into legitimate apps or fake apps being created. Not so much one trying to hijack the other, but anything is possible. Yeah, we haven't seen that yet, though.
I actually had an experience with a piece of malware on an Android device.
Okay.
I think it's a month and a half ago. And it was from downloading from Android Market. And it ended up installing a background app that would throw up notifications on the phone, and also put icons in other portions of your open space on your desktop or your screens. And the problem I have with this, I'm savvy with protection and such, but when you go to the Android market, there are literally dozens of what they call spyware protection. And I went through, say, 6 of them, and not a single one did anything for me. And lucky enough, it's time for an upgrade. I didn't feel like rooting the device to start over, so I'll
Right.
get a new box. I think the hard part is how do you get, you talk about getting protection and a client onto the customer. I don't know if you have an application yourself that's in the Android market that can be purchased, but that's where we have the problem is how do you educate the customer that they are infected? What do you do now?
Right.
Besides wiping the device and starting over.
Right. No, I agree, and obviously our also objective is to make sure we try to, inspire you guys to preload or to give access at least via your app stores or in some other messaging to these applications when the users are buying the phone, so they can have them on there from the start and prevent themselves from getting infected. Because once you get infected, like you said, you can run a scan, see what's causing that issue, and try to uninstall it. But if it's a very sophisticated virus, like you said, it may have got rootkit.
You couldn't see it anywhere. You couldn't tell it's something.
So you'd have to do a complete master reset and completely wipe everything out, right? So as far as the legitimate, mobile security is a hot space right now. There's all kinds of companies that are popping up claiming to be mobile security companies and spyware companies and anti-spyware companies and so on. Certainly, there are well-known names out there. We do have an application that's on the Android market. It's called NQ Mobile. I'll show you the actual app here, just for you to see it. You can buy this here on the Android market, and it has several features. The other thing I would recommend is there are some reports, some laboratories that have been out there testing these applications, right? AV Test is a lab that's very well known in Germany that has recently done a study of mobile security applications, all like the 40 or 50 mobile security apps that are on the Android market. They went through every single one. They ran samples through them, and they really saw which ones can detect the threats and which ones can't. So AV Test is a good organization to reference. And there's another organization that did a mobile security study called West Coast Labs, and they're UK-based, and they did one back in end of October last year. Right, and so all the big names are on there, the ones you've heard from the PC side, the McAfee, Symantec, and then there's the mobile-focused ones like ourselves and Lookout, who's our biggest competitor, I would say, in the U.S., right? So just to give you a feel of AVG's another one, F-Secure. So I would reference these third-party agencies, to see from a independent standpoint what they're recommending and what they're seeing are the most effective engines. Yes, sir.
A number of apps started to come out that accept your credit card information, and then you can go to any store and purchase goods using that app. There's one called Square
Yeah.
that's out. You're probably also familiar with PCI compliance. Some companies are working to become PCI compliant because credit card data transmits over their networks. How do you see these kind of apps like Square becoming compliant, or companies, cellular companies becoming compliant, PCI compliant, having apps like these on the phones that transmit credit card data over the networks?
How do I see them becoming compliant?
Yeah, how does that, how are they going to secure the phones, or is that even something that can be done?
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, that's beyond the scope of what we do in our mobile security space on the client side. So I'm not the best qualified to answer that particular question. I don't want to tell you I am. So I would have to defer that one. So, good question, though. Anything else? Yes.
Are you also seeing destructive malware? So I remember in the
Yeah.
early 90s, a lot of the malware out there, it was before people started trying to do it to get information or to get money. A lot of it was, for example, to try and crash the computer or try and wipe out the data.
Right.
Are you seeing things like that?
We are, yeah, good question. So the reasons why we've seen malware have been about 50% of the malware have been targeted for financial gain. About another 30 to 35% has been to steal private information, and there's been about 10%, 5% of other reasons, and 10% for system damage. So it's a small percentage of the total, but yeah, there's guys out there still doing it for fun and trying to crash people's system.
Sorry, another one. In terms of your application for checking the permissions on what other applications are doing, you said you can see what access they're asking for.
Yes.
And you can uninstall them, but can you block them from certain permissions?
Not on Android today. On iOS, for example, you can turn location off type of thing, right? But on Android today, you can't modify the permissions of the app. It is something that we're working to do in the future.
Because the APIs don't allow it?
Yeah, you need a much lower level access of APIs. Now, we have a partner called 3LM, just to give you kind of a longer answer. But a 3LM is a mobile device management company. It was started by two of the original Google Android team members. And they have they've written a patch, they've really low level access into the Android framework. They are able to do that from a mobile device management standpoint. They are able to, install apps remotely, uninstall apps, and then change permissions of apps as well for enterprises and for operators, for large fleets that are being managed remotely. We've partnered with them, and they're integrating via API our cloud scan engine into their product. Our idea is to also use their APIs in our consumer version going forward to be able to access those permissions, but it's not something that can be done today. Good question. All right. So thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance and your time.